Hi there, and welcome to the second IndieNational podcast with me, Ewan Hosey, and co-host Colin Scott. Today, we're going to be reviewing Julian Schnabel's Diving Bell and the Butterfly. We're going to be looking at international remakes and, how Hollywood is kind of ploughing the depths of previous classics in order to get some new teens into the cinema, bums on seats.
As well as that, we'll be looking at the DVD release of Eastern Promises.
So first off, we're going to go for the review of Diving Bell and the Butterfly. I'll take it over to Colin. He's got quite a bit to say, I think.
Diving Bell and the Butterfly, cinema release. It's a French film, and it's all centres around the editor-in-chief of Elle France, Jean-Dominique Bauby, who in 1995 had a stroke and woke up from a 3-week coma with locked-in syndrome, which is basically completely paralysed, can't speak, and could only use his left eye. His right eye was still functional, but the muscle had gone so he couldn't blink. To prevent it being septic, they sewed it up in what in the film is a pretty horrific and squirming scene. But his upshot is he ends up with only one eye, one usable eye, with which he views the world. And in this situation, he initially completely withdrawn into himself, but he eventually sees the plus side, and in a somewhat inspirational and amazing 2 hours he decides to dictate his life story and his aspirations into a book which he described as his bedridden travel notes.
The book's a bit of a classic, I think, a bit of a modern classic. I remember friends of mine reading it and saying, you've got to read this, it's an amazing account of this man's life, or lack of life, I suppose you could say, almost, because of his paralysis. But how do you think Julian Schnabel's done in adapting this film? It seems quite a hard film to adapt.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing you have to think
is... a hard book to adapt, sorry.
Yeah, well, yes, one of these things that they always say after the film's done well that it's unfilmable, but but as always with these unfilmable books, they seem to give it to the right person, they'll do something with it. And I mean, the first thing, I mean, looking at it on paper, a guy who can't move and can only see out one eye, in terms of the possibilities for a cinematic experience, you wouldn't think it'd be much, but in actual fact, visually it's unbelievable. It's a really stunning film. Yep. There's so much point of view shots from his, no depth perception, left eye view of the world, but it really does put you in his position. And as well as that, it's complemented by his narrative, his internal thoughts you hear, and it's an amazing way to view this thing. And as limiting as it is, it gives so much and adds so much to the story. And it also lifts this, in terms of having his narrative there, it really lifts the story because the guy has a real dry, sarcastic sense of humour, and after the initial shock of what's happening to him is over, when he wakes up, he starts to just plough through day in, day out with this dry sense of humour, which is actually really funny to watch and really funny to hear, even though it's a horrific situation. And that kind of continues till you eventually come out of his eye view, and when he has his butterfly moment where he decides, I can't stay here trapped all the time. I still have my imagination, I still have my memories, I still have people who love me, and I'm going to, from this, create what I want to create. And he channels that into telling this book. And even then, the director Julian Schnabel takes it a step further and goes beyond his worldview and gives us all these great landscapes and these great cinematographic views of the world. And it's
I've heard the Janusz Kaminski, the cinematographer, won the Oscar this year for Diving Bell and the Butterfly. He's a regular Spielberg collaborator on Saving Private Ryan, and in fact most of his films post Schindler's List have been Janusz Kaminski. So
like I say, it's one of the things you come away from this film is the look of it, and everything to do with it is unbelievable.
The music too.
Music's good. It complements the story well, but it doesn't stand out as much as anything else. What does stand out though is, and I hope it does, I'll probably say this incorrectly, Matthew Amalric.
Right.
You probably know better than me, Ewan.
Which one? I'd say Matthew Amalric.
Who plays Jean-Dominique Bauby, the main character, who does unbelievably well. Yeah. For an actor that can't move anything except his left eye.
It recalls Javier Bardem's performance in The Sea Inside a couple of years ago. He played a bedridden character in that, and I can imagine it's got a similar vein to it.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but certainly it was so impressional. So many scenes where he's getting one standout scene in particular where he has a phone call with his dad, and he of course can't communicate over the phone. His dad is also him and has like his own diving bell in the sense that he can't leave his house to come and visit his son, so they have to do it over the phone. But of course John Doe can't speak back to his father, so he can only listen to what he's saying and speak on the phone. And I don't want to ruin the scene, but his father, it gets very emotional, and the main actor's got to express all this emotion with just his eye, and it's it's held brilliantly by a Max von Sydow performance at the other end of the phone. But such an amazing scene, and as I say, with the movement is one eye, and in addition to that, all the flashback scenes of his life prior to the incident, when he's a swaggering, kind of uber confident editor, in the fashion world, he plays that so well, and the whole thing just comes together brilliantly.
Okay.
And I mean, Nutshot is what you have in what should essentially be a depressing thing about a guy. It's a very uplifting story, and you come out of the film feeling very good and very positive about yourself.
Okay, thanks for that, Colin. The Diving Bell and the Butterfly is on general release now. Probably be out on DVD in a couple of months, I should imagine as well.
So, yes.
So now we're on to the news. We're talking about the Akira remake.
Yep.
It's been announced.
Hollywood at the moment Hollywood historically has a habit of taking European films, international films, and deciding to remake them and mess about with them as they see fit.
It's true. Well,
two that spring to mind are Nikita, which made with Bridget Fonda and The Assassin, which was given a cheery ending.
Wasn't great.
And then also another one that springs to mind is The Vanishing, which is a Dutch film, and I can't remember the name of the Dutch film, but it too was given a rather cheery ending.
Yep, we've got Funny Games coming out too soon. But the difference with Funny Games for me is that it's the same director.
Michael Haneke.
Yep, and also because it's got Haneke directing it as a shot-for-shot remake, we should be able to get something that tonally is very close to the original, and hopefully performance-wise can at least...
as I understand it, the American studio bought the rights, and Haneke thought, oh no, they're going to take my film and they're going to ruin it, they're going to Americanise it, so he kind of said, give it to me, I'll redo it. But from what I understand, the studio is still they're not aiming to publicise a Haneke film. They're aiming to do what they were originally going to do. So whether or not the audience that this studio aims at is going to get the film and the layers that Haneke's trying to put into it is another story. Yeah, the film, for those who are unaware, is about, it's sort of a satire about violence in movies, really. It's very postmodern. It's these two young men. They all dressed in white, and they go to the house of a young, middle-aged couple in love, and a successful couple with their young boy who've moved into the area recently, and then they cause chaos, and a lot of violence ensues, but it's all done in it's almost a surreal way. There's one particular moment in the film where someone actually comes back to life at one point. It's a very strange film, and a lot of people didn't get it. But it's done from a voyeuristic point of view. I mean, the film is supposed to be, pulling the audience in to take, what Haneke's trying to say is the audience is ultimately responsible for the action that's happening in the film. So during all the torture scenes and all as the violence in the family escalates, the two boys, wink at the camera.
That's right.
Directly to the audience.
It's that kind of postmodern thing. It's about the audience's predilection for violence in movies, and it's kind of turning that on its head. So we're hoping that he can keep that in the American version. Apart from the fact, really, you feel with the original film, he was really making a comment on American audiences in general. But
it'll be interesting to see whether or not the studio. The intended audience for the studio is going to really pick up on that, or understand it, or even want it in a film that they want to see.
That's right.